In Leadership Driven Project Management Academy, one of the things that we address pretty regularly are stages of team development. How many stages of team development are there? Well, it depends on which philosophy you like. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using a model based on Dr. Bruce Tuckman's model. And the model is very familiar to a lot of people. That's not exactly why we use it, though. It's the dynamics between the stages that makes it really important. Every single team goes through various speeds at which they travel through those different stages of team development. So you want to be careful that you are giving your team what they need as they go through each of them. As a matter of fact, it is so interesting a topic for a lot of my coaching clients and a lot of my workshop participants that we have decided to do an entire series with lessons on each of the stages of team development. But this one's just kind of an overview. It's important to know because if you're not aware of what those stages are, you could conceivably get in the way of your team productively moving from one stage to another and making the greatest use of the dynamics that they're building as they do that. Every single stage is going to require a little bit something different from you. Don't think of these as hard and fast rules. They're not, okay? And every team is going to go through a couple of these stages, potentially multiple times. I remember when I got my first team, I was so jazzed. I had no idea I was going to be getting an monumental lesson in the stages of team development. We must have had 6 shifts in team members where I was losing one or gaining one, or once losing 3 and gaining 1. And that was just in the first 2 months. And that's when I learned a really important lesson about the stages of team development. Every single time you lose someone, the remaining people are a whole new team. Every single time you add someone, the new group of people are a whole new team. We go all the way back to the beginning. So let's outline just the stages of team development according to Bruce Tuckman's model and a little bit about why they're so important. Forming is the beginning one. It's usually when enthusiasm is high and people might or might not know each other very well, and they're kind of, sussing each other out. Please don't push through this one. It's very important that everybody get a chance to make decisions of their own around the parameters of their trust and communication. Then there's storming. This is not about fighting. Well, okay, let me rephrase that. Most of the time, it's not about fighting. Occasionally, a few interesting conversations could result in the storming stage. It's all about power. We're trying to figure out what our boundaries are. We're trying to figure out who has influence, who apparently doesn't have influence, who can sway people, who are the people that are perfectly okay with being the ones being swayed, who's got access, who's got information, how are people using their influence, and how are people misusing their influence. That's everything that's going on in storming. But at some point in time, honestly, the storming stage starts to fade away. Do not try to push it. Your team needs to understand these parameters around themselves and everybody else on the team. And if you try to push the conclusion of the storming stage, you're just going to run into bigger problems later on. Trust me, this is scar tissue you don't want to have. Yes, I do speak from experience. And then there's norming. This is when the real work of the project actually starts to get completed. You see, it's not that work isn't being done in the forming and storming stages, but work is not the primary focus. In norming, it becomes the primary focus. Thank heavens! But there is a difference between Tuckman's model and my interpretation of certain elements. I believe that many teams stay in a norming stage. Few teams get to what I refer to as the high performing stage. Not just the performing stage, but the high performing stage. Tuckman's model calls it performing. It's when essentially the team is about as autonomous as it's going to get. You're still needed, you still have an important role. But honestly, they don't need you to check in on them all the time. They don't need a babysitter, and they're getting productive work done. It's been my experience, though, that when you do your best job as a project leader and you're supported by your leadership team in doing that best job, you can take a team from performing to high performing. A couple of advantages of that. Oh, let me count the ways. Your team starts to work not just cooperatively, but collaboratively, and interdependencies are not allowed to stand in our way, and the positive ones are leveraged to give our teams more power and more productivity. I could go on, and in fact, in one of the other videos when we talk about key success parameters, I kind of do. So tune into that one if you want to learn a little bit more about what our firm beliefs are at KSP Partnership about the topic of high-performing teams. Now, at some point, the project's going to end. At some point, the team may have to go through a journey, and the project's not over yet. It's just that we've now added somebody, we've lost somebody. Hopefully, we add somebody shortly after we lose somebody. Hopefully, if we lose multiple people, we actually gain multiple people, preferably at the same time. Doesn't always work that way. So the team can actually go through adjourning stages well before the project is actually going to end. There are some people who equate the adjourning stage with the 7 stages of grief. I'm not sure I would take it that far, but I can certainly see the connection. And in the video that we do specifically on the adjourning stage of team development, I'll address that a little bit more in detail. Now, all of these stages have important contributions to make to your team's efforts and your team dynamics about how well they work together, how productively they work together, and how productively they can handle conflict resolution. That's why understanding them each is so very important. It's such a powerful tool for you in your leadership toolbox. Every single one of our videos is set to give you a couple of hints of things that you can do. Encourage the forming stage. Please don't rush the conclusion of the storming stage, because sometimes the things that you don't want to do can be just as valuable to hear about as the things that you do want to do. But every single one of our video lessons is going to be geared towards that. And as we start doing the production on and then releasing every single video on the stages of team development, you're going to find that the same thing happens there. For every stage of team development, we're going to offer you some very practical, workable suggestions. If you have any comments or any suggestions to add on any of the topics that you hear through this video channel, please put comments in. We love to hear from you. And if there's a particular topic that you'd like to hear about, but you're not actually sure we've got it on our schedule, or you think, well, of course it's on their schedule, I just don't know when, let us know. We'll move it up. And when you subscribe, you'll get notified every single time we release a new video. I'm Kimi Tuzimski. It's been a pleasure to have you here, and we look forward to seeing you again. Bring a friend, because if you know someone that you think would find these videos of interest because of the topics and the practical suggestions we make, please share it with them. Encourage them to subscribe. We'd love to have them as part of the community for leadership-driven project management. Thanks for joining us.